I body my choice. Ethan said it without looking at me, like reading a sign he'd walked past 1,000 times. The bedside lamp carved a hard edge along his jaw, and the light caught the silver of our wedding band on his hand, polished, perfect, and used. 6 weeks married. 6 weeks of good morning pecks that missed my mouth, of busy and tired, and don't make a thing of it. 6 weeks of me learning the exact distance he could stand from me and still call it love. Before we get into the mess I'm about to tell you, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. If you've ever felt the chill of a bedroom where love pretended to live, you'll understand what comes next. I'm Melissa Ward, 29, designer of other people's dream homes and resident of my own unfinished one. I married Ethan Hale on a clear winter afternoon at Maroon Ridge Hall, where glass walls made the Rockies look close enough to touch. People danced, my mother cried, Ethan smiled the way men smile when they promised you the rest of their lives. We cut the cake, dipped in the first song, and everyone said we were beautiful. No one warned me that beauty can be a mask that fits too well. On our married for 6 weeks night, an anniversary I invented because I was tired of waiting for a reason to feel married, I pulled out a silk nightgown I bought with quiet optimism. I stood in the doorway. He scrolled, throat working over something he wasn't saying. We're married, I said soft so the sentence would land like an invitation, not a demand. He locked his phone, finally faced me. We're married, he echoed, not entitled. A shrug. A practiced kindness. My body is mine, Mel. Please respect my boundaries. Boundaries. Such a good word in the wrong hands. When we were dating, he'd fold me into him in the movie theater, text me goodnight at 2 a.m., kiss me like a promise on my front steps. Then, after 3 days in Telluride, he was exhausted every night, altitude headaches. Something in him turned off like a porch light at dawn. He still brewed coffee for 2. He still said love you while tying his shoes. He just removed the part of us that touched. I tried to be logical. People adjust at their own pace. Some men carry private histories like a locked room. Trauma takes time. But logic turned on me when the patterns sharpened. The phone always face down. The calls he took outside even in January. The routes home that doubled in length. The smiles for no one. One Thursday at breakfast I said, I'm thinking of driving down to Santa Fe this weekend. Jade's showing her ceramics. He paused barely and lifted his mug. That sounds nice, he said into the steam. How long will you be gone? Just the weekend. I pushed the test a step further. Will you miss me? He rinsed the mug, back turned. I'll manage. I stared past him through our kitchen window at the edge of winter light arriving on the neighbor's roof, bright and unbothered. I'd designed this kitchen. Pale oak, matte black fixtures, a brass rail that threw warm reflections at sunset. I'd planned where the light would fall across morning fruit bowls and midnight conversations. I had planned for us. Ethan kissed my hair on his way out. Don't forget you've got that client consult at 2, he said. The line was gentle, the tone was empty. The door closed. Silence pressed its ear to the house. I opened my laptop to review drawings and watched the cursor blink in the corner like a tiny heartbeat, the only honest rhythm in the room. Then I stood up because some silences require answers. I told myself I was not the kind of woman who snoops. I told myself the truth is not held together by good manners. His home office could have been a showroom. Cables hidden, notebooks aligned by height, 2 pens in a tray, both capped parallel. The filing drawers slid open like breath. Texas. Health insurance. A single folder labeled Hale Consulting LLC. 3 pages of boilerplate, more white space than ink. His laptop needed a password, of course. I tried the obvious, our wedding date. Denied. His birthday. Denied. The name of the ski lodge we stayed at in Telluride. Denied. I left it untouched. No marks, no heat, because the office felt like a museum where touching things would set off alarms. I was turning to go when I saw it. A small square of receipt paper caught under the edge of the trash liner, white against white. I tugged it free with 2 fingers. Wisteria Floral, Henderson, Nevada. 12 red roses. 3 weeks ago. A weekend he'd spoken at a wealth management breakfast in Boulder. On the back, in Ethan's architect-neat handwriting, a phone number with a Nevada area code and a single letter. I. My throat went dry. I for Isabel? Isabella? Ivy? Or just I for I see you? I photographed the receipt, slid it back exactly where I found it. That evening I parked across from the building where Ethan kept office space with other consultants. The big glass lobby made a stage of everyone who walked through it. At 5:59 his car turned in. He sat a while, smiling into his phone, hands moving as if he were describing a sunrise to someone who liked the same colors. When he finally went inside, he didn't badge into the elevators. He walked into the ground floor coffee shop, ordered, sat in the corner and performed work. Open laptop, occasional frown, a neat stack of printouts he threw away when he left. At home he showered, humming something bright. He left his phone on the nightstand to charge. He usually took it into the bathroom. Maybe he was getting comfortable with me being ignorant. The code wasn't our wedding date. It was the venue's street number. I'd watched him type it once, laughing with the photographer. My hands shook because the boundary I was crossing wasn't a line anymore. It was a bridge I had to take to get off an island. The messages were a room I did not know existed inside my house. Isabella. Their thread stretched back months. Little private languages. Photos from angles built for intimacy, shoulders, a freckle on a wrist, 2 hands wearing rings against a courthouse wall I didn't recognize. Missing you, baby. Can't wait to see you this weekend. This whole thing is almost over. Almost over. What thing? What timeline had I been living on without consent? Water cut off in the bathroom. I forwarded the worst of it to my phone and moved everything back 1 click at a time. Careful the way you step away from a sleeping animal you're no longer sure you understand. When Ethan came out, towel around his waist, hair damp, he looked lighter. The relief looked like love if you didn't know better. I knew better 15 minutes ago. I'm going to turn in early, I said. He smiled. Good idea. Big day tomorrow. Big day. For what? I stared at the ceiling in the dark and counted my breaths. On 10 I began to list what I knew. The receipt, the number, the Henderson florist, the Nevada code, the ground floor coffee office, the texts, the rings, the courthouse wall, the word almost. Grief slid a chair up next to me and made space for fury. It surprised me how steady fury felt, like standing in boots on a hard floor after weeks of slipping on ice. Morning brought clarity like cold water. I called a lawyer whose name I found on a forum where people told the truth about what happened to them. Her assistant said to come at 3 and bring what I had. I went to my consult at 2, smiled through comments about clean lines, warm minimalism, signed off on a stone sample that looked like something from a planet where people didn't lie. At 3 the lawyer, Claire Reynolds, studied my screenshots then studied me. Melissa, she said, each syllable precise, what you've shown me raises the possibility of bigamy. In Colorado that's a felony. It also voids a lot of things men like Ethan think will protect them. The word bigamy touched my skin like a cold key. I thought maybe an affair, I said, amazed at the smallness of the word in my mouth. But he married someone else? We'll confirm before we label anything, she said. But if he did, your next steps are legal and strategic, not emotional. Do you have a prenup? I nodded once. He said it was standard. Fair. He said it would protect us both. Claire's mouth tightened. They always say that. She recommended a private investigator, Marcus Hale, and 15 minutes later I was in his office, a tidy 1-story brick place near a tire shop and a bakery that smelled like cinnamon. Marcus had the kind of eyes that made you think of faded denim and police reports. I've seen variations of this con, he said, jotting dates as I talked. Whirlwind romance, rapid ceremony, delay intimacy to maintain control and avoid entanglements, pressure to sign protective paperwork, position himself to access assets, then exit. Some men run 2 marriages at once. It's logistics and appetite. Logistics, I repeated, and the word made me want to break something small and pretty. He slid a slim recorder across his desk. Colorado's one-party consent. If he says something useful, you can capture it legally. Don't provoke. Just let him talk. Back home, twilight poured into our living room like ink. Ethan was cheerful. Tell me about your day. Cheerful, which is to say he performed a husband who listens and then forgets the details. We ate pasta I didn't taste. He excused himself to take a call, with a client on Pacific time. I clicked the recorder on and followed the sound of his voice down the hall, stopping by his office door. It was mostly closed, not enough to hide. I know, baby, he said, tender like he used to be with me, like he's practiced. I miss you too. It's fine. Busy. I think she's heading toward filing, which would solve a lot. Once the papers are in play, the trust unlocks and then we can move what we need. The prenup timing is perfect. The recorder was light in my hand. The house felt like a stage I'd woken up on mid-scene. I pressed a palm to the wall because the world tilted in a way that had nothing to do with altitude. Yeah, he continued, chuckling. She barely read it. I told her it was standard. First-year clause is airtight. If she jumps, we're golden. We. Who's we? I didn't have to guess. Tell me about your shift, he said, voice honeyed. Did Ms. Alvarez give you grief again? I swear I'll come down there and set that whole floor straight. A nurse. Isabella wears a badge on a clip that tugs at the hem of her scrub top, and she rolls her eyes when her supervisor is unfair, and she is, as of this second, real in my mind in a way that hurts. The call ended with a laugh. He whistled coming down the hall. I turned the recorder off. Set it carefully on the coffee table beside a book I wasn't reading. I folded a blanket because my hands needed something to do that wasn't violence or prayer. I slept the sleep of someone who'd found the trap door in her own house and left it open. Morning called from a number I didn't know. Marcus. Preliminary hits, he said, voice brisk. There's a marriage license in Clark County, Nevada. 8 months ago. Ethan Hale and Isabella Ruiz. I'll pull the certificate within the hour. If it holds, we'll loop Clara. We'll talk about timing and a controlled burn. Controlled burn. You light what must be lit so the forest doesn't disappear all at once. I thanked him, hung up, and stood in my kitchen where light was supposed to fall across a bowl of oranges like a magazine spread. My reflection smiled back from the oven door with a mouth that wasn't mine. I poured coffee and didn't drink it. I set the cup down. I picked it up. I set it down again. If you're listening and your gut is telling you that something is wrong, I believe you. That voice inside you is not jealous, not paranoid, not needy. It is a compass pointed straight at your survival. I picked up my phone, opened a new note and titled it Ethan Facts. Under it a list. Wisteria floral receipt, Henderson, Nevada. 12 roses, 3 weeks ago. Nevada number ending in 47, initial I on back. Coffee shop performances at his office, trashing staged paperwork. Texts plus photos with Isabella, rings plus courthouse wall. Call about prenup timing and trust access. Clark County NV marriage license hit, pending certificate. I added one more line before the screen dimmed. I am done being polite about my own life. When the door opened and Ethan's voice filled the kitchen, "Morning, Mel," I could finally hear the hollow chambers inside it. "Morning," I said and smiled like a woman who had learned how to build a different kind of house. "Got plans today?" he asked casually, pocketing his keys. "Just a few," I said. "Errands. Calls." He kissed my cheek, warm like a lie told by someone skilled at telling them. "Don't forget dinner with the Crossleys," he said. "Networking, remember?" "I won't forget," I promised. But I was already arranging my own evening. One more call to Clara, then another to Marcus, and then a quiet little test of my own. A tap on the glass to see which cracks spidered and which held. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop begging, stop explaining, and start collecting the truth like evidence. And sometimes the only way out is through the door you're not supposed to open. The receipt from Wisteria Floral burned a hole in my mind. 12 roses. Henderson, Nevada. 3 weeks ago. Ethan had told me he was at a financial conference in Boulder that weekend. He even brought home a name tag and a bland canvas tote bag stamped with a sponsor logo. I'd folded it into the laundry closet, assuming that tote carried hotel stationery and the remnants of a continental breakfast. Now I saw it differently. A prop. A piece of stage dressing in a life I hadn't realized was theater. I didn't confront him right away. Confrontation felt too clean, too finite. I needed proof. Hard, undeniable proof. My instincts screamed, but instincts don't hold up in court or in front of lawyers. Evidence does. So I played the role of trusting wife. Smiled at his jokes. Kissed his cheek when he left for client dinners. All while sharpening my awareness to a fine point. Patterns emerged. His disappearances grew longer, his excuses thinner. He claimed late meetings, yet came home without a laptop bag. His suits didn't smell of boardrooms, they smelled faintly of hotel soap. I memorized details, locked them away. The careful records of someone who refuses to be gaslit. Then came the slip that shifted suspicion into certainty. It was a Saturday morning. Ethan had left early, supposedly to meet a prospective client about investment strategies. I lingered in bed, my body heavy with dread. By noon I forced myself into motion. As I gathered laundry from the hamper, his jacket slipped from the chair. His phone clattered to the floor. The screen lit up, a notification preview before it locked again. Missing you already, red heart. I froze, pulse hammering. Not a business client. Not a coworker. Not family. The initial matched the receipt. I pressed the jacket to my chest until I could breathe again, then carefully placed the phone back on the nightstand where it belonged. I didn't need to open it yet. The preview alone was enough to chill me. That night, while Ethan showered, steam hissing from behind the closed bathroom door, I crossed the boundary I'd been circling for weeks. I picked up his phone. My fingers trembled as I entered the code, the street number of our wedding venue. A secret I'd stored like an accident. The phone unlocked. My lungs didn't. The messages were endless. Her name was Isabella. Their chat glittered with intimacy. Wish I could kiss you goodnight instead of this cold bed. Soon, baby. She's clueless. Just a little longer. Our rings look perfect in this light. Attached were photos. Ethan, smiling wider than he'd smiled at me in months, standing with Isabella in front of a courthouse wall. Both wore simple bands on their left hands. They leaned into each other, casual, comfortable, like they'd been together far longer than he and I had ever managed. My stomach twisted. Courtroom walls, roses, a message thread full of endearments meant for someone else. My marriage certificate back home suddenly felt counterfeit. Like I'd been tricked with paperwork and vows spoken to air. The next morning I tried a different approach. Conversation disguised as curiosity. Over coffee I said lightly, maybe we should think about marriage counseling. To build a stronger foundation. For the briefest second something flared in his eyes. Panic? Fear? Then it vanished beneath a polished mask. We don't need that, he said smoothly. 6 weeks is nothing in the scope of forever. We just need to adjust. His words felt rehearsed, like he'd practiced them in a mirror. I smiled, stirring my coffee until it went cold. Inside I added another line to my growing mental file. Avoids counseling. Overexplains patience. Looks rehearsed. Later that day I followed him. Parked across from the glass front building where he supposedly worked. At 6 sharp Ethan's car pulled in. He stayed inside, phone pressed to his ear, grinning like a man in love. For 20 minutes his hands danced in the air, punctuating a story I wasn't invited to hear. When he finally got out he didn't head to an office suite upstairs. He walked into the ground floor cafe. Ordered a drink. Opened his laptop. Shuffled papers he later tossed in the bin. It was theater again. An alibi with props. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, realizing that the Ethan I thought I married didn't exist. He was a character written for me, cast in a role he intended to exit. That night, while he slept beside me breathing steady, I scrolled through his phone again. Screenshots flew to my device. Every intimate message, every photo. Insurance against denial. Proof against gaslighting. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The recorder Marcus had given me heavy in my purse on the floor. Tomorrow, I promised myself. Tomorrow I'd catch his voice saying the things he thought I'd never hear. But tonight all I could do was turn to the shadow beside me and whisper into the dark. Who are you really, Ethan? His chest rose and fell steady. The kind of steady that only comes when someone sleeps without guilt. Or worse, without conscience. And I knew, the first cracks had opened. The dam was about to break. When you're trapped in a marriage that feels like a stage play, there comes a moment when pretending you don't see the cracks becomes impossible. For me, that moment came the morning after I copied Ethan's messages. I stood in the shower until the water ran cold, watching steam blur my reflection on the glass, asking myself one question. Am I his wife, or his mark? I searched for attorneys in Denver who specialized in complex family law cases. One name appeared again and again in articles, client reviews, even whispers in legal forums. Clara Reynolds. Known for untangling messes that weren't just divorce, but fraud, betrayal, and crimes hidden in wedding vows. Her office sat on the 24th floor of a glass tower downtown. The kind of place where the windows reflected mountains and sky so perfectly you could forget what was happening inside. I sat across from her desk, my phone trembling in my hands as I passed it over. Screenshots. Photos. The courthouse picture of Ethan with Isabella. The text promising that this whole thing is almost over. Clara scrolled, her brow furrowing deeper with each swipe. Finally, she set the phone down and folded her hands. "Melissa," she said, her voice calm, measured, devastating, "what you've shown me suggests potential bigamy." The words slammed into me like a sudden drop in an elevator. My mouth went dry. I'd thought affair. I'd thought lies. But bigamy? That can't be, I whispered. "We have a marriage certificate. Over 200 guests saw us exchange vows. A licensed officiant signed it. That's real." "On your side, yes," Clara said gently. "But if Ethan was already legally married when he said, 'I do,' to you, your marriage is void on his side. Bigamy is a felony in Colorado. Punishable by up to 6 years in prison." Prison. The word tasted strange on my tongue, both terrifying and oddly satisfying. I pressed my palms against my thighs, grounding myself in the cool leather of the chair. "So what do I do?" "You build a case," Clara said. "But first we confirm. I'll connect you with a private investigator I trust. He specializes in marriage fraud." That's how I met Marcus Hale. His office was nothing like Clara's. A converted one-story brick building near a bakery, where the smell of cinnamon rolls drifted in every time someone opened the door. He was in his 50s, wiry, sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that said he'd seen the worst in people and stopped being surprised by it years ago. I told him my story. He listened without interruption, jotting notes in a small leather book. When I finished, he leaned back and steepled his fingers. "I've seen patterns like this before," he said. "These guys are predators. They court wealthy women quickly, rush into marriage, then position themselves for access to assets. When they've taken what they want, they vanish. Sometimes they juggle multiple marriages at once." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. But Ethan was so convincing. He knew everything I loved, every little detail about me. Marcus's gaze softened. "That's the trick. They study you. They learn what you want to hear, how you want to be touched, where your weaknesses lie. They become the man you dream of, until you sign the papers they need." He slid a small recording device across the desk. "Colorado's one-party consent. If he says anything incriminating, you can record it legally. Don't push him. Just let him talk. These men always trip over their own lies eventually." The device was cold and heavier than it looked. I slipped it into my purse, feeling like I'd just picked up a weapon I wasn't sure how to use. That night, over dinner, Ethan was all casual charm. Asking about my day, commenting on the pasta like it was worth discussing, smiling the way a husband should. It felt rehearsed, like a scene from a sitcom. Halfway through, his phone buzzed. "Sorry, client on Pacific time," he said, standing up, disappearing into his office. I slipped the recorder on and crept closer. His voice carried through the door, warm, intimate, dripping with affection I hadn't heard in months. "I know, baby. I miss you too," he said. "She doesn't suspect a thing. Honestly, she's making it easier by pulling away. If she files for divorce, perfect. Once that happens, the prenup does its job. I get half her trust fund. Then we're free." My knees went weak. I pressed a hand to the wall just to keep myself upright. The prenup. The one he'd insisted on. The one I'd barely skimmed because I thought love meant trust. The one that said if I divorced him in the first year, he took half of what I brought into the marriage. Everything was deliberate. Every cold shoulder. Every excuse. Every avoidance of intimacy. Not boundaries. Not trauma. Not exhaustion. Calculated con. When he hung up, I slipped back to the couch, switched off the recorder, and folded a blanket over my lap. He emerged minutes later, cheerful, humming, dropping a kiss on my hair as if nothing in his office had just detonated my world. I smiled back. Because I finally knew. Ethan Hale wasn't just a liar. He was a criminal. And I was done playing the part of his clueless wife. I used to think silence was empty. That it meant nothing was happening. But that night, sitting on the couch with the recorder still warm in my purse, I learned silence can be the loudest sound in the world. Every casual smile Ethan gave me, every hum under his breath, every glance at his phone, now I heard it all differently. Not as quirks of a husband adjusting to married life, but as the mechanics of a con man playing his part. The next morning I made pancakes. I needed to play the role, needed him to think I was still blind. He came into the kitchen, kissed my temple, and poured coffee. His performance was flawless. Mine was better. I slid the recorder into my sweater pocket. Halfway through breakfast his phone buzzed. He excused himself, stepping into his office. I followed, quiet as breath, and pressed the recorder on. His voice softened the way it never did with me anymore. "Good morning, baby. Yeah, I miss you too." He laughed, low and intimate. "She's getting suspicious, but honestly that works in our favor. If she files, the prenup clause triggers. We can move on faster." My blood ran cold. He wasn't just waiting for me to fail, he was pushing me toward the decision that would ruin me. I know, he said, chuckling. The prenup was genius. She barely looked at it. First-year divorce clause locks everything in. Half her trust fund, no questions asked. She thinks it's for protection. I gripped the wall, steadying myself as the truth unfolded one cruel sentence at a time. He had never wanted me. He had wanted my grandmother's trust. "Don't worry, Isabella," he said, his voice tender. "This whole situation will be over soon. Then it's just us. I'll fly down this weekend. We'll celebrate properly." He ended the call with words I hadn't heard since our honeymoon. "I love you. But not to me. Never to me again." That night, when he finally fell asleep, I sat in the dark and opened my note file titled Ethan, Facts. I added, "Recorded phone call. Confirms prenup strategy, trust fund theft, intent to leave. Mentions Isabella by name. Plans weekend visit. Expresses love to her, not to me." I stared at the list until my eyes blurred. My marriage wasn't a marriage. It was a scheme. A contract signed in lies. The following day Marcus called. His voice was brisk, businesslike, but I could hear the edge of anger even through the phone. I pulled the records. Ethan Hale married Isabella Ruiz in Clark County, Nevada, 8 months ago. 2 months before he proposed to you. The license is valid. The certificate is signed. This isn't just infidelity, Melissa. It's bigamy. Your marriage is void. He committed a felony. The room spun around me. My instincts had been right, but hearing it confirmed felt like the floor cracking under my feet. "Does Isabella know about me?" I asked. "Unclear," Marcus said. "But from what you've told me, she may think she's the only wife. Or she could be in on it. Either way, we have more than enough for charges. The prenup can be voided on grounds of fraud." "But Melissa," he paused, his tone sharpening. "We need to catch him in the act if we want this to stick." That night, over dinner, Ethan leaned across the table and gave me a smile that used to melt me. Now it chilled me. "You seemed quiet today. Everything all right?" I forced a small smile. "Just tired. Maybe thinking too much." He reached for my hand, the first genuine touch in weeks. My body stiffened. He thought he was reeling me back in. He thought he was winning. But I wasn't the woman he married. Not anymore. There is a moment in every betrayal when grief burns itself out and something colder takes its place. For me, that moment came as I sat at my kitchen table with Marcus's voice still echoing in my ear. "We need to catch him in the act." I wasn't just a wife anymore. I wasn't even just a victim. I was a witness, a strategist, and soon I would be the trap. Marcus outlined the plan during a late-night call. "Ethan will try to move on the trust funds soon," he said. "He thinks he has the prenup as leverage. What we need is clear, recorded proof of intent. Him actively discussing how and when he'll take the money. Once we have that, the fraud case is airtight." "Meaning?" I asked. "Meaning," Marcus said, "you let him think he's winning. Feed his confidence. The more relaxed he is, the sloppier he gets. And the sloppier he gets, the more he'll incriminate himself." I stared at the dim reflection of myself in the kitchen window. My face didn't look like mine anymore. It looked like someone else's, someone harder, someone who wasn't afraid of fire. "Fine," I said. "Let's set the stage." The next morning I made sure to appear distracted. Not broken, not furious, not suspicious. Just a little tired, a little resigned. The way a wife looks when she's trying to convince herself everything is fine. Ethan noticed, of course. Predators always notice shifts in prey. "You're quiet again," he said over coffee. I shrugged, forcing a soft laugh. "I've just been thinking. Maybe you're right. Maybe we rush things. Maybe we're not working the way I thought we would." His green eyes flickered. First surprise, then something that looked dangerously like triumph. "These things take time," he said smoothly. "But if you're unhappy," he trailed off, letting the sentence hang like bait. I tilted my head, pretending uncertainty. "I don't know, Ethan. Sometimes I wonder if divorce would be easier." He didn't flinch. He didn't look wounded. He looked relieved. That tiny spark of joy in his expression told me everything I needed to know. He wanted me to say it. He wanted me to file first. And I had just given him the opening he craved. That evening Marcus and I met in his office again. He laid out printed timelines, connecting Ethan's trips with receipts, hotel check-ins and phone records. "He's been doing this for years," Marcus said grimly. "We've identified at least 3 other women in other states who went through the same pattern. Quick romance, fast marriage, prenup, then financial access. Each time he vanished before the ink was dry." My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to stay steady. "So I'm just another target." Marcus shook his head. "Not just. The one who's going to end him." Back home I tested Ethan again. While we ate dinner I set the recorder on low inside my pocket. "I've been thinking more about what I said this morning," I began, my fork idly moving pasta around the plate. "If we did divorce, at least the prenup would make it simple, right? No drawn-out battle. You'd still get what's fair." His eyes lit up just for a second. Then he smoothed it over with false sympathy. "Melissa, I don't want to talk about that. But yes, it would be simple. Clean. Quick." I smiled weakly, like a woman admitting defeat. Inside I wanted to scream. Every syllable he spoke tightened the rope he was hanging himself with. 2 days later Marcus called again. "He's started the process," he told me. "I traced a preliminary request to your trust's management firm. He's laying groundwork to claim funds as soon as the divorce is initiated." My chest tightened. "So what do we do now?" "We wait," Marcus said. "And when he makes his move we'll have law enforcement ready. But Melissa, this only works if you hold the performance. Don't let him know you know." I hung up and sat in the dark, the weight of the plan pressing on me. To the world, I looked like a wife slowly breaking under the strain of a cold marriage. But in reality I was building a cage and Ethan was walking into it willingly. That night as he brushed his teeth Ethan caught my eye in the mirror. "You know," he said lightly, "if you do want to talk about separating, I'd understand. I want you to be happy." I met his gaze, forced a fragile smile. "Maybe I will," I whispered. And his reflection smiled back. "Not with love. With victory." Which made me smile too, because he had no idea that every step closer to his victory was really a step closer to his downfall. Every performance ends with a curtain call. For weeks I had played the role of the weary wife, tired but willing to let go. Ethan believed every sigh, every forced smile, every staged hesitation. He thought he was the director of this play. He didn't know I had already rewritten the ending. The night came quietly. Too quietly. Ethan poured wine, lit candles, and looked at me with an ease I hadn't seen since the early days. "I've been thinking," he said, voice smooth. "Maybe you're right. Maybe divorce is the best way forward. No shame in admitting we tried." He said it like a gift, as if handing me freedom. I nodded, biting my lip just enough to sell the hesitation. "Maybe you're right," I whispered. Inside my pulse was steady. I had practiced this moment in my head 100 times. The next day he made his move. Marcus had warned me, he'll do it during business hours. Paperwork moves faster then. So I stayed home pretending to have a client call, while Ethan left in his perfectly pressed suit. But I wasn't alone. Marcus and Clara were already nearby, law enforcement on standby. My phone buzzed with Marcus's voice in my ear. "He's headed into the bank." I gripped the arm of my chair so hard my nails dug into the fabric. This was it. Through the tinted windows of Marcus's surveillance van, I saw Ethan walk in. Confident. Smiling. Carrying the documents he thought would deliver my grandmother's trust fund straight into his hands. He had no idea the trust managers were already briefed. No idea his request was flagged. No idea every word he spoke at that desk was being recorded. 20 minutes later it happened. Ethan slid the prenup across the banker's desk, pointing to the clause he thought guaranteed him half of my inheritance. His voice was calm, certain. "My wife will be filing for divorce any day now. I'd like to prepare the transfer of assets." The banker nodded, stalling. In the corner 2 men in plain suits moved closer. When the officer's badge flashed, Ethan blinked in confusion. "Sir, would you come with us, please?" "What? There must be some mistake," Ethan protested, his smile faltering. "No mistake," the officer said firmly. "You're under investigation for bigamy and marriage fraud." The blood drained from his face. For the first time since I had met him, Ethan Hale looked unscripted. By the time I walked into the room, summoned by Clara, he was already pale, seated at a table, hands trembling. His eyes found mine. For a moment the mask tried to climb back into place. "Melissa, please. You don't understand. She means nothing. It's you don't." I cut him off, my voice cold. "I recorded everything. Every word you spoke to Isabella. Every plan you made to steal my grandmother's trust. Every lie you rehearsed. You didn't marry me, Ethan. You tried to rob me. And you failed." His mouth opened but no words came out. Clara placed the evidence folder on the table, her tone sharp and professional. "The prenup is void due to fraud. Melissa's inheritance is safe. You, Mr. Hale, will be facing charges for bigamy and financial fraud. That carries years, not months." Ethan's shoulders slumped. The performance was over. Later, as I stood outside under the pale Denver sky, the cold air bit at my skin, but I had never felt warmer inside. Marcus joined me, his hands tucked in his coat. "You did well," he said simply. I nodded. "So it's really over?" "Legally, yes. But emotionally," he gave me a small smile. "That takes longer. So, you've taken back control." "That's the beginning." That night, I packed away the silk nightgown I'd worn on our 6-week anniversary, the night Ethan told me, "My body, my choice." I folded it neatly, not with grief but with closure. Because my body, my choice, my life. And this time the choice was mine alone. Now it's your turn. If you were me, would you ever trust again after something like this? Or would you close that door forever? Let me know below. And remember, subscribe if you want more stories of betrayal, survival, and justice served colder than ice.